Hi, this is Josh Marshall, and this is the Josh Marshall podcast with Kate Riga. This is another one of these, it's not quite an evergreen episode, kind of an evergreen episode. We're recording in advance. We're recording this episode on Friday, July 28th. And this is one of those episodes where there's a pretty good chance that there will have been major news on the topic we're going to talk about by the time you hear it, which is next Wednesday, something like, I don't know, what is it, August the 2nd, something like that. So we're doing this episode with full recognition that it is, I don't know, more likely than not that by the time you're hearing this, there will have been a series of January 6th indictments, presumably including former President Donald Trump. One of the things that doesn't get um, doesn't get discussed a lot in this conversation is that it's pretty hard to imagine it'll only be Donald Trump. I mean, that will be weird because I mean, there's a kind of an endless number of co-conspirators. Many of them seem to be cooperating. In terms of accountability, Trump is definitely the big one, but I don't know how you could do it and just say, yeah, it was just him. The others were just kind of like small bit players, so we're not worried about that. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. In any case, maybe it won't have happened. We're recording this in advance because my colleague, my co-host Kate, is going to be away next week. So what we're going to do today, again, good chance that'll already have happened, and that will, perhaps have changed the equation in some sense. But we've seen it coming for so long that I'm not sure how much it will change the equation. I mean, we're all sort of assuming that's going to happen. And I think we know enough about the case that we have, to a certain extent, baked in the fall-on effects of that indictment, both in a political and in an electoral context. But we're going to do today, we're going to talk about everything else. Because, we, by the time we recorded this, we already knew about this superseding indictment in the Mar-a-Lago documents case. We're going to talk about that's going to be one of our major topics today. But in addition to that, what I think a lot of people aren't fully focusing on is there are going to be a ton of things going on in court with Donald Trump next year. I mean, the list is longer than you think. So just as an example, just now we'll kind of hit them briefly in advance. So we're assuming now that there are going to be 4 separate batches of felony indictments involving Donald Trump. The one in New York State, the one tied to Mar-a-Lago, presumably a January 6th set of indictments, and then another one down in Georgia. Which is obviously related to January 6th in all the ways we know. But that's not it. There's still New York Attorney General Tish James, who has this sort of like mega omnibus, all the ways you're bad state civil lawsuit against the Trump Corporation, which is not, it's not a criminal one. It's not about putting Donald Trump in jail. It's about basically putting his company in jail, or like, exiling it from the state of New York or something like that. And E. Jean Carroll, who won a civil suit, both a civil suit about the fact, which the jury decided it was a fact, that Donald Trump had raped her, and also defamation tied to denying that he had raped her. He already won once, but then he went back and did the same. Did the same defamation again. And the judge said, okay, yeah, you can sue him again, basically. So that's going to happen again. So that's 6 different trial things that are going to be starting. They're actually going to start late this calendar year, and they'll probably be going on, unless Trump is elected president, in which case he'll just shut them all down, but probably going on for like a couple years or something like that. So, and one of the things we're going to talk about today is that, in addition to, like, let's call those the sort of the, I don't know, the kind of the mainstream cinema trials. not including like the indie trials, right? There's a million other kind of random lawsuits, not all of which are meritless by any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, like everybody in the universe is suing Donald Trump, or either his campaign or him or his company or stuff like that. So all this kind of things going on. Before we get to that, let me remind you that our podcast is brought to you by Grady's Cold Brew Iced Coffee. If you're tired of paying $5 for watered down, bitter iced coffee and ready to DIY instead, let me stop you before you Google how to make iced coffee at home. Making cold brew doesn't have to be complicated. You can do it without a French press, without a grinder, without a scale. You don't even need a measuring spoon. A beanbag bundle from Grady's gives you exactly what you need to make perfect iced coffee. Just drop your beanbags in a pitcher, add water, and sleep on it. 12 hours later, you get 12 glasses of New Orleans-style cold brew ready to enjoy all week. And that's for less than $1 a glass. It's a no-brainer. The only decision you have to make is whether you choose original, French vanilla, or decaf. If you're ready to give it a swirl, get 25% off at Grady'sColdBrew.com with promo code TPM. That's Grady'sColdBrew.com with promo code TPM. Okay, Kate Riga, so the big news that actually broke after we planned this episode was this superseding indictment, basically kind of not a sequel exactly, but kind of like, no, wait, there's more in the Mar-a-Lago documents case. So what's the story with that? What did we learn last night?
Yeah, and just real quick before we launch into that, just a slight tweak. When you're talking about Eugene Carroll in the intro, I technically they didn't find that he raped her. They found him liable for sexual abuse, which
Well,
go
the
ahead.
reason I said it that way was, but there was this. Did you see this thing where um, Trump somehow went into court and they chose to litigate whether, because I guess she said
Yeah.
rape, and the judge said, look, it's rape, by the common, by the by the ordinary English meaning, he raped her. So, but
Yeah.
as so
Yeah.
as a legal categorization, it's sexual assault. But even the judge, I mean, I added it for that reason, because you have to have either a really stupid lawyer or a really stupid client to work your way into the judge saying, okay, look, he raped her. That it happened. What can I say? Right? I mean,
Right.
if
Totally.
they didn't have to kind of like have that happen. They
All
didn't
right.
have to like, litigate that distinction.
Yeah, so you don't need me, you're covered on that. But so yeah, superseding indictment broke last night, which is kind of funny because we here at TPM have been on like 24/7 indictment watch, and then the big news that breaks is like, oh, the other indictment, not the one we expected. And so the thrust of it is that it includes a new defendant, which is Carlos de Oliveira. Is that how we're saying it?
Like Oliveira or something. Yeah, I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um, who I guess is the property manager at Mar-a-Lago, and like the thrust of most of the details in the indictment is about um, wiping stuff from the servers, like the kind of security camera footage post getting a grand jury subpoena for the footage, and they're kind of as these indictments have tended to do, some like good little details in there about, some consternation about whether this property manager guy was going to be loyal or not, being assured that he is. And then Trump calls him and is like, no worries, bro, I'll get you a lawyer. Like, it'll be fine. Includes adding new charges, which are so the revised indictment includes new charges against Trump himself, which include attempting to, quote, alter, destroy, mutilate, or conceal evidence, end quote, inducing someone else to do so. And then a new count under the Espionage Act related to the war plan that he showed visitors in Bedminster, which we had already knew that the delicious kind of surrounding incident of that was the writers working on Mark Meadows' memoir were the audience for this particular bit of national security information. So just kind of expanding the the scope a little bit, building upon some things that we had already heard about, and then looping in this new guy, which just kind of like completes this image of you have Trump and then you have these like almost cartoonish stoogey guys who are texting about like loyalty to quote the boss, and are conspiring trying to figure out ways how to wipe the servers. And then you've got the poor guy who's like in charge of the security footage being like, I don't know how to do that. Also, I don't think I'm
I don't
allowed
think
to
that's
do
allowed. I
that.
don't think that's allowed. Well, and the sad thing, I mean, look, I don't know if it's sad or not. It's or depending. It sort of depends on which meaning of the word sad we're talking about. But the Nada guy, this new guy, and I think I saw that, and with the new guy, it wasn't clear to me whether he's a property manager or like the property manager for the whole place. I would think that the property manager for the whole place is a pretty, pretty big position. I mean, it's like a big hotel. I mean, you know, I don't know what do you want to call it, club or whatever. But in any case, and I think I saw that the new guy, De Oliveira, um, was a valet for Trump, I guess before he was president,
Mm.
and that he was later promoted to a property manager or the property manager at Mar-a-Lago. But the thing that really comes out to me is that these guys aren't like high rollers. They're kind of, I mean, in the a valet is a servant, right? I mean, it's servant, body man, whatever. These are not people with like lots of resources. And by whatever means, Trump has basically, for now, gotten them to go along with looking at serious jail time for him, where there's no doubt they could just call up Jack Smith and say, "Hey, can we work something out?" Right? So there's no question at all. And so the part that that you just mentioned about when he says he'll line him up with a lawyer, well, who's that lawyer work for? Obviously Donald Trump, and that the nature of that representation, there's only one way to go about it. You're not going to say, "Oh, lawyer who's being paid by Trump. Let's talk to Jack Smith about making a deal for my cooperation." That's obviously not happening, and it's not. I don't. It's very hard to. It's hard to know in those cases if you're dealing with someone who doesn't have a lot of experience being like being a felon. Uh, do they know kind of the full range of vulnerabilities they're facing? The time they're facing, the fact that they could just make it all go away just by telling the truth to the prosecutor. I mean, that's the kind of the I don't know if it's weird or sad or just a kind of a big vulnerability out there for Trump when these guys realize what they've signed on for. Um, and I will I will say one other point. If it was anybody else, or certainly if it was a Democrat, you'd have everybody in Washington saying that it's disgusting. They're kind of leading these people, the guys leading these people with them to jail.
Hmm.
Having these people, inducing these people to, kind of throw their lives away. I mean, I don't know if how for obstruction exactly. Is the new guy, is he just on an obstruction charge, or is he also looped in on the unlawful possession, use, hiding of classified documents? I mean, I think false statements is up to 5 years, and like without a previous conviction, you never get 5 years. But obstruction's a more serious thing. You definitely do jail time for obstruction. In any case, it's just sort of like it's weird, right?
Yeah, and it's also like what you just laid out is also kind of even a good faith version of what could happen. Like that's what would happen if Trump actually did get this guy like a decent lawyer, and you're totally right. It's the same kind of thing of how like does HR work for the employees? No, it works for the company, right? It's like this lawyer is going to work for Trump, and that's like if Trump even ends up getting him a lawyer, which I not sure I would put a lot of money on, like, that's something that's gonna be in Trump's head for more than the passing moment than when people were like, "This guy's gonna be a loose thread we should tie up," and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, let me call him."
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I mean, there's also I was reading an email from a former federal prosecutor type who kind of understands how these things work. And one question about the superseding indictment is, why is there a superseding indictment? Like, do we think that there's one possibility is that they have a significant new evidence now that they didn't have
Right.
previously. That's possible, but like, does that really make sense? It's not obvious why that would be the case. This guy had already talked. Presumably they have all of the presumably they have all the whatever electronic evidence that they're basing this on. Presumably they have all that. Now, one possibility is that they, maybe they're still working on that one aspect of the case, but for whatever reasons, they felt like they needed to indict Trump within a certain timeline. So they went ahead and did that, get back to this other thing later. Another is that conceivably, maybe this is part of upping the pressure on this one dude. But why wouldn't you just indict him at the beginning and let him squirm? I even saw some speculation that it's possible that this has something to do with trying to get some more options for the scheduling of the trial. I mean, who knows? Who knows? And at some level, may not matter. But it is kind of been investigating for a long time. Why would you come back with more later?
Right.
And maybe the simplest evidence is they just solidified some more evidence. Who knows? But it is kind of a question that doesn't have an obvious answer.
And the biggest sadness in the superseding indictment is that it doesn't include confirmation of the reports that they had flooded the pool to try to get at the servers, which like
Yeah.
I want that to be true so much because that's such like a madcap like little kid idea of like how do we do this? you
Well,
know?
does the new indictment? And I'll be honest with you, I got like halfway through the indictment myself last night. I haven't finished going through it word for word. Does the new indictment throw that into doubt, or it just doesn't confirm it?
I think it just doesn't confirm it. Yeah.
Well, because one of the one of the basic things, I've been doing some projects with water recently, right? And when you're working with water and how to get water to do things, the pretty foundational thing is that water goes downhill, right? It floods from a high place to a low place. So one thing I wasn't quite clear, like, did they design the pool so the overflow is into the place where they keep the servers? I mean, like, how is it even like it's not, I mean, yes, it's madcap, but it's not even obvious that like you can do that. I mean, are the servers beneath the pool? So if you pull out the stopper, it goes down into the servers? Like,
I'm
it's the
just
whole
like
thing is
I'm picturing Trump and these two guys doing like a bucket brigade from the pool to the server room being like, "Oh no."
oh no, it flooded. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, who knows? I guess we're not going to solve that one, but that would be a kind of a cherry on the top.
Yeah. And so do you have top of your mind when obviously the scheduling stuff has been such a point of consternation, but when kind of the next step in the doc stuff goes forward, is that still
Well, okay. So the the decision that the judge, um, Aileen, wait,
canon?
Connor, wait, what is
Canon?
her last name?
It's canon, right?
Cannon, right? You're right. Cannon. I'm losing it. So she made a trial date in late May,
Okay.
2024. So that's kind of that's the trial date for right now. Obviously, it's a bit of a placeholder. And what some people were concerned about is that, okay, so that's there. And so let's say by the time all you listeners are listening right now, we have a January 6th indictment. Okay. So whoever gets that indictment, presumably in Washington, D.C., can they schedule it before the Mar-a-Lago case in May? That's a probably a pretty complex case, and maybe not, right? Maybe there's not enough time to do all the discovery and whatever you need to do and schedule it to have enough time, so they don't bump into each other. And if that's the case, maybe that judge says, okay, we've got to go after the documents case. So maybe the judge in the January 6th case says, okay, late May for the documents case, we'll give that case 6 weeks to run. So we are going to set ours in July. Okay, so now we've got the big cases scheduled for May and July. What people were concerned about is now Connor down in Florida, who basically works for Trump,
Cannon.
right?
You want
Cannon.
her to be named Connor so
I
bad.
know. What is my problem? Cannon, right? Okay. Judge Cannon down in Florida, who still works for Trump, even though she's named Cannon, right? Okay. So now she's basically in charge of the scheduling for both cases because remember, hers is first up. So there's a million reasons cases get delayed for good reasons, or just if the judge wants to delay it. And the delays of the Mar-a-Lago case are going to force delays in the January 6th case. So now the Trump stooge judge down in Florida, Cannon, right, is in charge of the scheduling of both. And so that's kind of where that is right now. And I even saw some speculation that this, superseding indictment might be a way to kind of push it a little later. And that then the January, I mean, obviously it's just endless speculation.
Totally.
Who knows? It's probably none of it is true. That's just kind of random judges trying to schedule it around their vacation,
Yeah.
right? In 2024. But that is the next thing. I believe it's something like the 24th of May, 2024 is currently when that case is scheduled.
It is so funny, the little like kind of cottage industry of like reading into parts of these cases that are like frankly ridiculous, and really the pinnacle of that exercise. I don't know if you saw it, but it was what Anderson Cooper and Dana Bash, I think, on CNN, who the day that Jack Smith was caught coming out of Subway, they were like, what a statement that he's not afraid of Trump. He's going around his life, like going to Subway, just what an incredible statement. It's like, dude, a statement of what? That the man eats lunch?
Just eating a sandwich. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. No,
Yeah.
totally. There was oh, I think I mean this is sort of not a legal point exactly, but when I was reading the commentary about the superseding indictment and reading what I read of it, one of the things that struck me is that this case has become kind of a joke at the level of evidence they have against Trump.
Mm.
I mean, at this point, it's like they all but have him on tape saying, I need you to obstruct justice. Cool? And one of his lackeys says, like, you got it, boss. Gonna go obstruct justice. And Trump says, I'll get you a lawyer. I mean, the evidence is so overwhelming. I mean, the evidence obviously of just having the documents. And again, it's one of these things. There's no, the way that law is structured, there's some kind of like de facto ambiguity with a president, kind of like, well, just so recently you could have them, and maybe there's a misunderstanding what you took back to your house and everything. But the way the law is actually structured, you just can't have them. And if you say like, wow, they got stuck in my pocket and I didn't know, too bad. It's just you can't have them. But also on the obstruction stuff, the evidence is so overwhelming. It's anybody in the universe would plea out here besides Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It's that like it's that rock solid. And frankly, I don't even think there's anything that Cannon can really do for him. She can delay it. That she can definitely do that. But the facts are so overwhelming. She just doesn't have any room to kind of make decisions that are gonna help him. So anyway, that's my commentary.
So like you mentioned up top, in terms of indictment watch, January 6th, and we haven't mentioned this, but this came out post our last pod. Our listeners, I'm sure, are aware, but that Trump's lawyers went to meet with Jack Smith, which is like the kind of now that's the habitual step before the indictment's unleashed. Um, giving the defense kind of an opportunity of like, if there's anything else you want to tell us,
Yep.
now's the moment. If you've got some get out of jail free card, this is the time to play it.
Yep.
So, and that was what, Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, I think. No,
I think Wednesday. I think it was.
okay.
I think it was Wednesday. I think it
And
was
now we're
Wednesday.
recording this Friday. And people are doing their usual kind of trying to read into grand jury schedules and questioning like the dudes who stand by the door at the courthouse and stuff.
You know what? Actually, I think it was yesterday. I think it
Thursday?
was Thursday. Yeah, because if I'm okay, so with that with the January 6th grand jury, I believe it normally meets on Tuesday and Thursday,
Okay.
and they were also having the sort of, I mean, it's not really come to Jesus, it's run away from Jesus, but the kind of the final meeting the same day, and we were talking basically, you know they're not going to vote on it the same day they have that final meeting, right?
Mhm.
There's just kind of, you're not going to run over to the grand jury and get the kind of so I think it was actually yesterday
You're right, it
that
was.
they
It was
had
on
that. Yeah.
Thursday. Um, so, we're that one is kind of impending, and then there was some, like, kerfuffle in Georgia where they erected these barriers outside the Fulton County courthouse, which
Oh, I
had
didn't see that.
yeah, which had everyone kind of thinking like, "Oh, man, is this a kind of preemptive for the indictment to drop?" And in reality, there's, like, kind of a few sort of, big cases cooking there. It's not necessarily Trump. Um, and I guess we already have kind of a loose schedule of when we're expecting the stuff out of
Yeah,
Fulton.
isn't it something in the first half of August? Like they
Right.
have a, yeah, so they have in this, in at least down there, there's, as you said, it's kind of, we've known for a couple months that like it's kind of on hold until like the second week of August or something
Yeah.
like that. I mean,
So, I
obviously
mean,
they haven't
everyone's being really
closed.
jumpy. And
Yeah.
I mean, we could be surprised, who knows? But it seems that's still, that's coming soon to a theater near you.
Yep.
Um, so those are the other kind of two big felony indictment ones that we're on the watch for. And then, like you previewed in our intro, Josh, when I tell you that I tried to put a list of like the various legal entanglements Trump is involved in, and it was just ludicrous endeavor. Like, I knew that there were a lot of cases that it's hard to keep in your brain at once because they haven't been in the news for a long time and they've been kind of superseded by these bigger cases. But it's just ridiculous. The list is endless. And then you have his kind of like, the I almost it's almost like communicating via lawsuit type stuff, which is where you have like Trump and then his niece Mary Trump like suing and countersuing over, her memoir or him cutting her out of the inheritance. Like you've got that kind of low level stuff. I'm gonna kind of read some of these for comedy, but the big two that Josh you previewed is the Tish James one out of New York, which is she says that she's uncovered kind of a decade long pattern of financial wrongdoing at the Trump organization and wants, $250 million back. She wants to kind of ban Trump and the top children from running a company in New York again, would kind of boot the organization out of the
When
state.
you say that the top children,
Hmm.
that's probably unintentionally so apt that it's sad. Right? They're
Yeah.
not worried about Barron or the daughter. What's the daughter with
Tiffany.
Marla Maples? Yeah, Tiffany.
Oh, yeah.
They're
I
it's
mean,
only
top
that.
in every way,
Yeah.
top in his affections and
Yeah,
top in the
exactly.
organization.
Exactly.
Um, so that trial will start on October 2nd, per the judge, come hell or high water in response to the Trump's camp kind of trying to do the scheduling evasion they usually do. Um, but I mean, that would be a big deal. And, maybe most importantly, it if she's successful, this lawsuit would pull the Trump organization's papers of incorporation, and that would mean that Trump can no longer draw revenue from, the his various New York properties and the rent that's going in there, which is like a especially the commercial rents, that's a pretty big revenue stream for a guy
Right.
who gets sued every other day. So,
Right. Well, does it? So how does that work though? I mean, presumably those properties aren't confiscated from him. Does he have to reincorporate them in
That's what I
another
would guess,
jurisdiction?
right?
Or yeah, because
Mhm.
I remember when this something quite similar happened with the NRA, because the
Uh-huh.
NRA is, despite basically being running out of Virginia for forever, the NRA, because in the distant past it was a normal sort of like non-fascist organization, is incorporated in the state of New York.
Mm.
And so they did this investigation. They took away its incorporation, and what that means, it was a pretty big it was a pretty big deal. You got to reincorporate, and it's a big deal, right? It's a really big deal. But I don't think Trump's property would be confiscated. I mean, maybe what it would be is that if they get a judgment for $250 million, they basically put liens on all his things, because obviously he's never going to cough up the money voluntarily.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean that's a big deal.
Right.
The
And
one I
go
would
ahead.
say the only thing that I would doubt about Tish James' claim is that she discovered a long-term period, corruption. Because what is there to discover? I mean, everybody knows he operates as a total sleazeball.
Right.
But I'm sure it's there. I think we all realize it's there. It's just if someone with an interest in kind of putting it all together gets elected attorney general, which obviously is what happened.
Right. And like I said, the quote unquote top children, this involves Ivanka and Don Jr. and Eric, who are all executives of the Trump organization, which would be kind of interesting because obviously Don Jr. has kept himself, uh, you know, I wouldn't in the public eye is too generous. In the kind of eye of like right wing fringy people who are on Rumble and like his kind of crazy, like,
He's become
high
like an alt-right
energy
influencer,
right,
basically.
exactly,
Yeah,
that's a good way to
yeah,
put it.
yeah, yeah.
So he's been there, but, Ivanka has really kind of ducked out of the spotlight really, since the election overthrow attempts, like, she and Jared, I guess, decided, we got what we're gonna get from this situation, so let's just scuttle away now.
Yeah, move on. We're going
Yeah,
legit.
exactly. And, yeah, I guess I have nothing to say about Eric because I
Well,
don't know what
here
he's been up to.
well, here's the thing with I don't my senses with this is kind of interesting to me, because if we go back if you go all the way back to the Apprentice days, Ivanka and Don Jr. were guest judges. I
Mm,
mean, I know this because my wife and I did watch The Apprentice. So they were guest judges. Eric, I don't think, was ever a guest judge. And even in 2015, 2016, the presentation was, Don Jr.'s the guy.
mhm.
Maybe Ivanka's kind of the guy too, but Eric is just the freak that whatever, he barely makes it into being a top child even, right?
Yep.
But my sense is that as Don Jr. has gotten more and more into the alt-right thing, that you've seen kind of Eric come into his own. Like he seems more and more involved with the business, getting involved with his own crimes and his own political stuff. So I think Eric has ascended, even as
Interesting.
Don Jr. has kind of gone, behind the music, if you know what
God,
I
it's
mean.
just, like, impossible to not imagine these people as the Succession kids being like, "Oh, I think it should be me."
Totally, totally, totally. So
Um,
yeah.
so that's a big one, and then the other, kind of top of the one is, we saw E. Jean Carroll got won the case, got $5 million from Trump. That was back in April. And then what happened is she had initially filed a lawsuit in 2019. That was not this one that she just won. That one was kind of got tangled up because um, the Justice Department made the argument that his disparagement of her was part of his presidential duties, so he's like he's got immunity, he's shielded. But then what happened there is the Justice Department now dropped its argument that that was part of his presidential duties. So that kind of clears the tangle in that case. And that second defamation trial, which Carol has added new claims onto because Trump has continued to disparage her, that is on track to start in January.
Okay, I saw. Okay, that's interesting because I thought I thought wrongly that the new trial was entirely because of the things he said after the verdict. But so it sounds like you're saying that there was going to be a new suit, but then she added the new stuff after she won the first.
Right. That's right.
Got
Hmm.
it. Okay, interesting, interesting,
Yeah. So
interesting.
combination of kind of the old case getting unstuck and then her adding the new fodder that he said after the old case was decided.
Now, how does okay? So if she was going back for another go at Trump, even if he hadn't said those new things,
Mhm.
there must be more. I mean, since she won the first case and she won $5 million, there must be more that the DOJ getting out of the way made possible. Do we know what those are? I mean, because at least on its face, she won. She won a bunch of money. Why? Like, it seems like the DOJ didn't get in her way very much. Do we know what the additional things she could get from him without
I
without
don't know.
that?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I wonder if well, this is what you come up against when you're dealing with the Trump docket. There's the
Yeah.
things has so many different permutations and limbs that it's. Now let me ask you one other question. I thought that um in the process of her bringing suit, or maybe this is what initially led her to bring suit, that New York State changed its statute of limitations
That's
with
right.
civil lawsuits. So how does that fit into the mix?
That fits in because it's um how she made her claims that were about the sexual assault itself and not the defamation. So this new law basically gave like a 1 year grace period for people who were survivors of sexual assault to file claims against the person who assaulted them, even if the statute of limitations had run out. So that's how you get in the claim the sexual abuse stuff and not just the more tangential defamation stemming from the sexual
About it.
abuse stuff.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so did she file originally just for the defamation and then that
That's
law
right.
came up? Interesting,
And
interesting.
that's
And
what
so
sparked the second lawsuit. Also because this first one, like we said, was entangled in that question of presidential immunity then.
interesting, interesting. And so the New York State law basically created one year um a 1 year opening that sort
Mhm.
of regardless of when the acts happen, kind of from the date of the legislation for 12 months, here's your chance to go back and okay, got it. Interesting,
Exactly.
interesting,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so we've go ahead. We've covered
Well,
that
it's
one.
also just like it's funny to me that she gets $5 million. She wins, she gets this big payday, and then he immediately starts talking more shit, and she's like, "Well, we're going back to court in that case." Like I feel like it would be a totally valid argument if by that point she was kind of like, I won, I got what I came here for. He had to kind of, to some degree, answer to this stuff. People have learned about it, but instead she's like, and we're back. See
Yeah,
you
I
here
mean,
in
I get,
January.
I mean, look, I mean, she at the end of the day, she wants to punish him for good reason. I mean,
Mhm.
on both counts, both for what happened initially and for attacking her over it. And clearly she's up for more,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, didn't he? I thought I heard that. I mean, because my my lack of total satisfaction when you have these verdicts is always that I figure like, well, somehow he's going to never
Pay it.
pay it, so
Yeah.
whatever. But I thought I heard that soon after that, he actually had to basically put $5 million into an escrow account
I saw
in New
that as
York State.
well. Yeah.
I guess subject to appeal, so she doesn't get it yet. But basically, that means that when the appeals are exhausted, she gets the money. It's not
Mhm.
in his hands anymore. So she's, That's good money.
Yeah, I read her book where she first made this accusation, and, it's there's the premise of it, right, is, like, throughout her book, she's talking about, like, her hideous men list of, like, men who have attacked her or treated her badly throughout her life, and it's so weird that the book is also really funny, even with this really dark stuff, because it's intertwined with her journey around America, where she's like asking random women that she runs into in the street, like, what are men good for? But I wonder, if part of this is like there's just so much accumulated stuff in there, and part of that comes from the fact that she was this very, still is, but very kind of like high profile New York magazine writer back when that was like in the
A
Sex and the
thing.
City heyday where that could
Yeah.
make you a celebrity. So she did brush up against a bunch of these, you know, big, famous, horrible men who we've only recently started, like, reckoning with in any way. I just wonder if there is, like, some kind of emotional snowball effect where she's, like, finally kind of empowered to do something about at least one of them, and then he decides to go run his mouth, and it's like, "Well, we're going back."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I totally get it, and I mean, like, I think that I would well, I would have no idea, but it seems from her actions that she has processed the I mean, any woman who is going through what you need to go through, either to criminally or civilly hold someone into account for assault or rape or whatever. There's obviously there's a lot of uck that goes in. You
Mhm,
know, there's a lot of pain, uck, everything that goes in with that. And presumably, she's either already processed the uck, and she's just down to kind of, punish him even more, or she is just this is kind of her mission at this point. And it's really the thing with Trump is I think even most of the worst men, they may go and rape other women after they lose their case, but they're probably not going to go back and defame the same woman the next day.
I know,
Like, that
but
is a
that's the
no-brainer.
thing.
That's not
He's
hard.
such a dumbass. It's like he just can't shut his mouth for more than 30 seconds. So it's like, yeah, good. I mean, it's it's just like it's so ridiculous. It's just none of this stuff like makes any dent in how he behaves ever. So it's just like it might as well see if you can like go back to the well.
No, and it's we've seen something similar with Jack Smith, that,
Mhm.
during the Mueller probe, he attacked Mueller, but not a lot
Yeah.
and not really directly. It was mainly all the 59 Democrats and Hillary supporters working for Mueller and all this kind of stuff. But he didn't go right at Mueller. And he's every day saying about Jack Smith, he's a crooked, out of control freak. And I'm not, you don't see a lot of this stuff, the listeners, because it's all on True Social, and you'd only kind of hear it as it gets picked up by other news organizations. But the kind of thing that, first of all, any other defendant would probably get hit with additional charges for threatening, kind of
Mhm.
threatening violence against the prosecutor. And and this is kind of, in some ways, I think it's kind of the point of this episode, that and we sort of alluded to it, that Trump needed to put that $5 million into escrow for Jean Carroll. Uh, we have all absorbed the seeming reality that nothing matters for Trump.
Mhm.
No matter what he does, no matter if he gets indicted, no matter if he gets sued, no matter if he loses, somehow or another, there's always another appeal. There's always another nonsensical thing. And either because he's Trump or because he's a former president, there's always another bite at the apple. And the can is just perpetually kicked down the road, and whatever happens, he's still down hanging out with whatever his not latest Nazi best friend is down in Mar-a-Lago. But what we seem to be seeing over the next 15 months during 2024, the kicking the can, the making excuses, the putting it off until forever seems to be running out of steam. And now all of these things are actually coming to trial. And, maybe he's going to get lucky in Florida because he's got a stooge judge. But, like, I don't think he's going to get that lucky in D.C. or maybe Georgia
Yeah.
or maybe even New York, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you get convicted and then you get sentenced, and then they walk you out. And as we've discussed, the big thing obviously is, like everything really at this point, is whether he can delay things through, not even so much through the 2024 election, but until January 2025. And if he wins, he just makes it all go away. But that kind of means that, like, now everything is on the line for winning the election. And if he doesn't, he's going to do a lot of, probably the rest of his life in prison.
Yeah, and I want to append an asterisk to what I said about him being a dumbass, which I do think he is in some ways, but also you're totally right that the speaking out after you just lost a defamation case and stuff, it's some part dumbassery and boorishness, but it's also what you're saying. It's just like when you've been unaccountable your whole life. I mean, clearly the justice system doesn't work the same way for you, which is why it really is so just like so rich to see the whole right wing being like, he's being specially targeted, the weaponization. It's like if you treated Trump like a normal person off the street in any of these
We wouldn't
cases.
be here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but no, you're totally right. And it's this kind of thing where we're always have to fight against the Teflon Don 2016 thing where it's like, well, it doesn't work the same way for him. Like things that used to be conventional wisdom just don't apply anymore. And it's like, no, getting indicted is not good for Trump. And that does not mean that his hardcore people who have his face tattooed on their bodies, like, even if they love him throughout, that does not mean that it's a good thing. For normal people, that's weird and that's bad. And they don't want a president who's like in and out of court all the time and trying to evade jail. It's not a good thing. And all of these court dates, all 8 gajillion of them, are going to hit while he's running for an election. He's going to have trials on the same day as caucuses and like briefings due on the same day of debates, and it's going to be a constant topic of conversation. And right now it hasn't come up all that much because Biden wisely is trying to not have any kind of appearance of impropriety of using his presidential pedestal to go after his presumed opponent, and then all the guys and women in the Republican primary are not doing it because they're afraid of alienating Trump's people. But once we get into the general, like, it's going to be a different landscape. And this stuff is going to get talked about all the time. And you're going to have just the very mundane nature of calendared court events to keep it in the conversation. So, I mean, we really are at a point where he is just running, trying to get elected before the cows come home because
Yep.
they're getting closer. The circle is shrinking and he's at the middle of it.
There's 2 points with what you just said. The first is, to your point about 2016, nothing matters, Trump's different, blah 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 blah. I do think one of the things that there was a brief, liminal, and ephemeral moment of reckoning after the 2022 election is that, so yeah, 2016 worked out pretty well for Trump. There's no question about it. 2018, his party got routed, basically. Okay. 2020, he lost, and they lost control of the Senate. And then 2022, where obviously his party's going to have a great time because it's the first midterm election for the president as the opposite party, and they didn't even do well then. So basically, they've had 3 straight disappointing and or losing elections. So like, and that was really the thing and what made DeSantis a thing, because a lot of Republicans kind of stepped back after 2010, 2022 and said, what the fuck? Like, this guy's a loser, man. I mean, this guy is like dragging us down. So that is that's the first point, and I can't remember. Wait, you edit this point out. What was the God damn? What was the
Was it
other?
like about the election and timing stuff,
It
or?
was the timing stuff. God. Oh, here's what it was. Joe's probably going to leave that in. Whatever. If he leaves it in, you know who to blame. Okay. So the other big thing is, and this is something to do with the technicalities of the documents case, and it may have another version of this for the January 6th thing. Most of us don't understand. Most of us understand you can't share classified documents. We understand things are classified. That means you can't show them to other people. Okay. But the ins and outs of like which of the 10 layers of classification is worstest and bestest and all this kind of stuff, and what a president can have and can't have, at some level you kind of take the government's word for it, not what the defendant did, but what the law is. Like, you can't do this, you can't do that. But at a certain level, most of us aren't really familiar with that. I have some familiarity with it because I've covered these cases before. But I think when you see stuff like this, when the defendant says, hey, go get the server, erase the server, understood? Everybody understands you can't do that. You can't be under investigation and be like erasing stuff. That's just, everybody understands that. And I think that's why, in a lot of ways, even though it's less, it's not the bigger crime, it's more damning because everybody understands that. You just can't do that. You can't be getting your employees to go and like, take the videotape and like and throw it in the swimming pool. It's just that you just can't do that. So those things end up being, I think, a little more damning for him than, in some ways, than the things itself. And we may have something like that in January 6th.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
So to finish us off, I just want to offer up a little charcuterie tray of the other lawsuits that Trump is fending off currently that, don't make the top of our list. But nevertheless, in some of these he's been deposed. Some of them have trial dates set. These are like the dwarf planets circulating outside the big solar system, if you will.
Yes.
So we have the whole tranche of like January 6th related stuff. You've got a group of House Democrats, then you've got a separate one that Swalwell is kind of leading using a different statute to sue under. You have like some Capitol Police officers, so there's like a whole bunch of stuff going on there.
Now, on those
Mhm.
ones, if I can ask you,
Yeah.
what are they suing? Like the House Democrats, Swalwell, what are they suing for? Are they suing Trump personally, and like for what damage to them? Or how does it work? What are they suing for? Do we know the dynamics of those? I assume that with the police, they're saying, I got my head bashed in and you're responsible,
Right.
and which makes perfect sense. And it's funny. So sort of the backstory here is that Kate and I, either yesterday or the day before yesterday, we're kind of planning out this episode, and we get the concept. We're going to go through all the other cases, and it ends with my saying, hey, you come up with the list, okay? You come up with the master list, or find a master list of all the cases. So this is what I condemned Kate to, having to go through when there's actually, turns out there's like 9 billion cases. If you actually want to look at every single person who has sued Trump and still has an ongoing case. But anyway, so
Yeah.
those are the January 6th
And
ones.
they just get goofier from there. Like here, you've got some people who are suing, taking us back to the Marshall's favorite show, The Apprentice, suing Don Trump Jr., Eric, Ivanka, as well as Senior, for promoting a multi-level marketing scheme on the Celebrity Apprentice, saying that they lost thousands of dollars from this MLM.
Oh, so not like contestants, like people who just got scammed by
Yeah.
some thing they had going on Slug. Okay, got it.
And
I thought it
that's
was like
going
someone wrongful non hiring as apprentice or something. But no, okay,
And
so
that's going to
Celebrity Apprentice.
trial in January 2024. You've got the various kind of Michael Cohen is one of these people who kind of lives his life by the mantra of that's like, if you're just like a big, loud, annoying pain in the ass, like sometimes you're going to get what you want simply because people don't want to deal with you. And it's easier to kind of like capitulate than to like keep tolerating you. And
Right.
I think these actions are kind of in that vein for him. He was suing for like a whole bunch of kind of back fees, during the Russia investigation and the hush money payments and testifying to Congress and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, you owe me in the neighborhood of $2.3 million to kind of like cover my time and my efforts during all of this, which was actually, this was going to go to trial on last Friday, but they settled. We
Oh,
don't
they
know
did.
how
So,
much, but there was a settlement.
oh, interesting. I mean, honestly, $2.3 million. I mean, that's not that. I mean, even for Trump not being a billionaire, it's not that much money. And you could figure that, like, in a trial, it's not going to be something bad is going to come out
Right.
for Trump. And I mean, regardless of how many of his out of pocket expenses, I mean, the guy like went to prison for like for covering up Trump's having sex with one playmate and Stormy Daniels. I mean,
Yeah, well, he
I'd be
wants payment
pissed.
for that too,
Yeah.
separately.
Oh,
Where
that's a different
this
suit.
is a different suit. Yeah, he
Oh, okay.
sued Trump and Bill Barr and, like, a ton of prison officials and stuff, I don't know, to kind of just due to his stint there, and he
Why
also thinks
not?
he was
Yeah.
unjustly put in solitary and everything like that. That case has been dismissed, but he is fighting on appeal, so stay tuned. And that
Interesting.
brings us
Interesting.
to, my favorite of all the cases, which is Eddie Grant, who is a composer slash performer behind the 80s disco reggae mega hit Electric Avenue, has sued Trump in federal court in Manhattan, where he wants $300,000 for copyright infringement because he says that Trump made an unauthorized use of the dance floor staple during the 2020 campaign, in the background of like a Biden bashing animation that Trump tweeted. And it was viewed, many millions of times before being taken down. Trump has countered that the animation was political satire and is exempt from copyright infringement, and that the campaign just reposted it. Who knows where it came from? And it's so funny because this case seems so small, and yet Trump has been deposed already last year, and he and the musician are under strict gag orders, so we have like no idea what's going on. So, um, there's an April 24 deadline for more evidence to be presented, but I just think it's so funny that like the strictest parameters of all of Trump's many legal entanglements are like the small money copyright infringement case that's been going for like multiple years.
You know what's so crazy? For some reason, I mean that song "Electric Avenue" is a really good song, right? And I remember when it came out, I thought Eddie Grant had died. I don't know whom I'm
Mm,
confusing him with.
guess not.
I mean, presumably not, since since he's in court. I had no idea. That's a good song. Was that and that was the song
Yeah, I guess he's
that?
75. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, there, there are many 75-year-olds. Most of the people who govern the country are over 75. That's so weird. I'm so glad to see he's still around and maybe going to get a payout from Trump.
I
That's
know. It's
wild. I
also
wonder
just
who I'm
funny
confusing him with.
because it wasn't that was such a recurring genre during every Trump election that like every walk-on song he would use, then there'd be like official statement from whatever being like, we do not endorse this man. We did not give him permission to use our music. And I just like it does kind of delight me that this one guy is like, and we're gonna go to court for it at that.
Yeah, isn't his is he still using the Stone song as his kind of like? I thought that was,
That
you
was
can't always get what you want. That was a big one.
that was a big one. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Maybe he'll have a new playlist this time around. But I mean, the problem is if you're only going to use musicians who are like down with conservatives, then you're going to get like country music people and then some kind of like D-list, like came in second on American Idol types.
Yeah, or people like who's the faux rapper guy who's big
Kid
on him.
Rock.
Yeah, you're in the Kid Rock
headlined
sort of
by
part,
Kid Rock. Yeah.
Yeah, part of the pond. Or interesting. Okay, well, there's a lot of lawsuits out there, and by the time that you hear this, there'll probably be another big criminal indictment, possibly. And just in case it's not the case, we don't know 100%. I mean, it's certainly possible that it could go a week more. Maybe Jack Smith's out of town Tuesday, and they got to wait till Thursday for the
daughter's got a recital or something.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, people have lives, and it's endless the degree to which reporters, especially, are reduced to trying to come up with a storyline to match the very thin and minimal array of evidence to try to figure out what's happening. But it's probably going to happen pretty soon.
Yep.
And I think that meeting with the lawyers, that makes it close to a certainty that it's happening. So it's just a matter of scheduling when the grand jury is going to vote and that kind of stuff. In any case, we hope you have enjoyed this pre-recorded episode of the show. Should we say we're going to have some new stuff coming on the show, or we're gonna leave that as a big surprise, as a little extra?
Yeah, maybe
extra
when I get back.
Yeah, okay. We have some new kind of things coming with the show, which I think is going to be pretty cool. Remember, the Josh Marshall podcast is brought to you by Grady's Cold Brew Iced Coffee. You can get 25% off at Grady'sColdBrew.com with promo code TPM. That's Grady'sColdBrew.com with promo code TPM. And I guess that's about it.
All right. See you next week.
Later.
The Josh Marshall podcast is hosted by me, TPM reporter Kate Riga, and TPM founder, editor-in-chief Josh Marshall. The show is produced by Jackie Wilhelm. Thanks to Why Not Jansfeld for our podcast theme song, and thanks to all our TPM members who make this possible. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and subscribe wherever you listen.